Discover the amazing journey of this grandma. Surprising strength overcomes 20 years of pain. Doris had always been a fighter. Yet, as she sat on the frayed couch in her modest living room, the weight of her past hung heavily upon her. 2 decades had passed since Harold's untimely death, and the ache of loss had become an unsettling companion. She felt a blend of resentment and love swirl within her, a guilty pleasure reminiscing about the good times but furious at the universe for stealing him away. Now, at 70, with her health frail and the family home crumbling, the idea of losing the only space that held their memories sparked a desperate flame in her heart. It wasn't just the house, it was everything else. As a former healthcare worker, Doris had dedicated her life to caring for others, neglecting her own dreams along the way. Her aspirations had slowly slipped through her fingers like sand, especially after Harold passed. She had poured her energy into her children, supporting their dreams while her own lay dormant. And yet, here she was facing the possibility of surrendering the last piece of him. The sound of paper rustling broke her reverie. A nudge of curiosity compelled her to rummage through the corner of the closet where she stored a box of memories. There, amidst old photos, lay Harold's journal. Its leather cover cracked, the pages yellowed with time, yet the ink spoke to her. On page after page, his vibrant dreams of opening a family clinic to serve their community filled her with warmth. Dreams he never got to fulfill, ambitions that harmonized perfectly with her own experiences. Would this not be the way to honor him? The thought electrified her. The growing resolve sent tendrils of doubt slithering through her mind, however. "You are just a grandma," a voice whispered. "What do you know about running a clinic, let alone at your age?" She could already envision her family's disapproval etched on their faces, their murmurs blending into a cacophony of worry. But what would they know about the fierce love that drove her? The notion flickered within her, a birth of hope or the madness of longing. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. But each day brought a new challenge. Her unyielding vision was met only with cold indifference from local officials who dismissed her as another dreamer. Too old, they say behind her back. And her family? They didn't just worry, they actively discouraged her. Often, her son would grip her shoulders and voice his concerns. It felt like shackles closing around her dreams, each clench tightening her resolve only slightly more as she internalized their stakes. Then came the first betrayal the moment she overheard her daughter's laughter mingling with doubts about Doris' plans. "She'll be fine, it's just a phase." That stung deeper, her own flesh and blood didn't believe in her. As Doris turned back to Harold's journal, every ambition unfulfilled spoke to her. She could feel the betrayal pooling within her, merging with the urge to rise above their lack of faith. Her hands trembled as she faced the dissonance, the painful reality of familial bonds beginning to fray. And just as despair threatened to engulf her, a thought lingered: was Harold's community truly gone, or had they poured their trust into her without her knowing? The first thread of hope had begun to unravel a tapestry of doubt, but as she prepared to take a step forward, an unsettling question loomed: would she find strength in the hidden ties of support left behind, or would her own family's skepticism unravel everything she held dear? The air grew thick with tension, the path ahead dark yet glimmering faintly with the promise of something worth fighting for. Doris pushed herself up from the unforgiving comfort of the couch, the journal resting heavily in her hands, its pages fraught with the desires of the man she had loved so fiercely. The commitment to uncovering her own path had become an avalanche, barreling forward despite the ice of doubt that threatened to freeze her resolve. She glanced around the room, cluttered and dim, where memories hovered like ghosts. Dust motes danced in the sunlight peeking through the worn curtains. In that moment of stillness, the weight of her inaction became palpable. If she didn't act, the echoes of Harold's dreams would fade into silence, lost like whispers carried away on the wind. Doris made a decision, driven by an awakening of fierce determination. She would not allow the words of others to dictate her future any longer. She didn't need permission, she needed a plan. With newfound urgency, she sat back down and opened the journal, letting Harold's passion seep into her with every word. Research. Gather support. Begin small, the self-written notes urged. They provided a roadmap through the emotional labyrinth she needed to navigate. The next morning, Doris awoke early, driven by a restless energy. She brewed herself a strong cup of coffee, its rich aroma filling the kitchen and enlivening her senses. Today, she would visit the local community center, the very place where Harold had once dreamed of launching his clinic. It wasn't just a place, it was a possible resurgence of hope and collaborative action. As she arrived, Doris felt her heart racing. The walls, adorned with flyers and community announcements, exuded an air of vitality she had long forgotten. She approached the front desk, her voice wavering only slightly as she asked for the director. Though her hands trembled, she clenched her jaw, refusing to let fear control her voice. "Hi, I'm Doris. I'm here to discuss a proposal for a health initiative," she began when a young woman named Julie appeared. Her eyes widened slightly, shadowed by skepticism at first. "A health initiative?" Julie echoed, a hint of amusement tugging at her lips. There it was, the familiar doubt staring back at her, but Doris pushed through. "Yes," she asserted, her voice solidifying with each word. "My late husband envisioned a community clinic where I believe we can provide essential care and support. I want to honor his memory by making it a reality." The fire ignited within her as she found her rhythm, detailing the small yet vibrant vision that had fueled her longing since she found Harold's journal. As Doris spoke, she caught glimpses of comprehension slowly dawning in Julie's eyes. There was a shift. She wasn't just speaking to a wall of indifference, but to a person who might actually see her. When she wrapped up her pitch, uncertainty still curdled in the pit of her stomach, yet there was an ember of hope lighting the way. "Let us discuss this further. I think we might be able to help you form a plan," Julie finally replied, a surprising shift that sent Doris's heart soaring. The elusive taste of possibility lingered on her tongue. Returning home, Doris felt a surge of empowerment. She grasped the journal tightly against her heart, sensing that each page turned had brought her closer to her goal. But as she sat back down on her couch, exhaustion crept in. While the glimmer of progress was thrilling, another thought curled around her mind. What if her family confronted her again? Would they understand? Would they stand by her, or against her? Holding Harold's journal tightly, she faced the looming question of loyalty and belief that weighed heavily on her spirit. In pursuing her dream, would she inadvertently drive a wedge between herself and those she loved? As the sun dipped below the horizon, the shadows in her living room deepened, reflecting the complexity of her journey ahead. She realized that every step forward would test the very foundation of her relationships. She would need to confront not just the world outside but the world within her own home, a battle for understanding that could either elevate her or tear her apart. The tension hung thick in the air as she braced herself for the conversations that awaited, but one thing was certain, she was ready to fight. The following morning arrived without fanfare, the ambience of the house burdened by the weight of the decisions looming over Doris. Deep within her, she could feel the stirring of anxiety about approaching her family with news of her new endeavor. They had felt her grief, witnessed the gradual retreat of her spirit. Would they stand by her as she sought to reshape her own narrative? With trembling hands, she prepared breakfast but found herself distracted, replaying the potential reactions like a film in her mind. She envisioned her son, David, concern etching lines on his face, and her sister, Elaine, arms crossed in disbelief. The unyielding grip of doubt tugged at her with each sizzling egg. Why can't they just understand? Doris whispered to herself, slamming a plate down on the counter with more force than intended. Resentment and sadness fought for supremacy, and she marveled at her own resolve not to back down. Harold had not just wanted to build a clinic, he had wanted to build a legacy. Doris had to honor that, not just for him, but for herself. After breakfast, she decided to take a pragmatic approach. Perhaps a conversation over coffee could soften the blow. Doris texted David, requesting that he come by in the afternoon. As she awaited his arrival, she returned to Harold's journal, flipping through pages worn from her constant search for inspiration. His words were a lighthouse amidst all the fog clouding her thoughts. Visualize. Connect. Inspire, he had written, and with each phrase, the embers of hope rekindled. She took a deep breath, focusing on the potential of what she could achieve not just as a widow lost in sorrow, but as a woman ready to reclaim her agency. Could she really tap into a reservoir of strength she didn't know existed? When the door opened, the familiar scent of David's cologne filled the air, accompanied by the engaged chatter that broke the silence of her home. She could hear his footsteps thumping as he added a touch of life to the mundane. "Hey Mom. Smells great," he exclaimed, his smile brightening the room. As they settled into the kitchen nook with steaming cups of coffee, Doris felt the warmth of the moment wash over her. She started casually, discussing work and life updates, but inevitably, her heart raced as she approached the crucial point of the conversation. "David, I have something important to share," she began, her voice steadying with each word. "What's up?" He responded, brow furrowed, a hint of anxiety creeping into his smile. "I want to start a health initiative," she stated, surprising herself with the directness of her delivery. It felt as if she had leaped into the abyss, strapped to a parachute made of hope. "A health initiative? What do you mean, exactly?" David asked, his expression shifting from curiosity to caution. She felt the room constrict as she explained Harold's vision to establish a community clinic. With each word, she poured her heart into the space between them, casting aside her fears like autumn leaves. But as she unfolded her plans, she caught sight of her son's rising tension, the crease in his forehead deepening. When she finally paused, she could feel the silence stretching out, laden with unsaid words. "Mom, it's great that you want to help people, but do you think we should invest in this right now? You've been through so much," David challenged gently, disbelief mixed with a protective instinct. His concern hammered against the barricade of her determination. "I want to do this, David. I need to do this for me and for Harold. Don't you see?" As the argument unfolded, each word ignited flashpoints of emotions: fear, hurt, love. She could feel the tender threads of their relationship tugging, but she pressed on, fighting valiantly for her vision, fighting for her place in the world again. Doris realized she was not just fighting to explain her aspirations, but rather forging a new identity, a woman reclaiming her existence after a lifetime of quiet dedication to others. Hours slipped away unnoticed, their dialogue morphing into a battleground of conflicting desires, until the heat of the afternoon gave way to shadows once again. Doris's heart raced, blood pounding in her ears, grappling with the realization that in standing her ground, she had forged a new chapter for herself, but also created an even bigger dilemma. As the conversation neared its end, a question reared its head that left Doris breathless. Had she miscalculated how her independence might fracture the very foundation of her family? And as David's expression reflected concern mixed with acceptance, a daunting realization crystallized in her mind: the fight for her future was just beginning, and every choice moving forward would demand an unyielding strength she had yet to uncover. The next wave of confrontation awaited as her sister called unexpectedly. Could she truly embrace vulnerability now that she had taken her first bold step? The phone rang, its shrill sound cutting through the thick air that had settled in the kitchen. Doris glanced at the screen. It was Elaine. Her sister's call was unexpected, and the proximity of their painful memories loomed large. With a quirk of apprehension gripping her stomach, she picked up the phone, exhaling slowly as she did. "Doris, is everything all right?" Elaine's voice pierced through the tension enveloping Doris. The warmth of their past quickly dissipated to reveal undertones of concern wrapped in disbelief. The unspoken worry settled heavily in Doris's chest. "Hey, Elaine. I wanted to talk to you," she began, her voice catching slightly. This was not just catching up, this was a reckoning. "I heard from David. He said you're planning to start a health initiative." Elaine's tone contained layers of skepticism, fraught with the edge of protective instinct. Doris felt that familiar instinct to defend herself rising, her emotions swelling with every word. "Yes, I am. It's something I feel passionate about, and I believe Harold would want me to do this," Doris asserted, clenching her hand around the phone, drawing strength from the very memory that had spurred her forward. "Doris, I can't pretend to be okay with this. You've barely begun to grieve, and now you want to jump into something so demanding?" Elaine's voice held a tremor that mirrored the conflict brewing inside Doris. Each syllable was a layer of doubt piling onto her already shaky foundation. "I've been grieving for long enough. This is my choice, Elaine. I don't want to be defined by my pain any longer," Doris responded, her heart pounding against her ribcage, the urgency of her conviction coursed through her veins. "Are you sure this is what you want? Everyone worries about you." The underlying tension escalated, each word from her sister's lips forming a wall Doris had to claw her way through. "I want to help my community. I want to feel alive again," Doris declared, her voice carrying more weight as she spoke. She knew bringing her vision to life meant facing not just external criticism but the inner turmoil that had shackled her for far too long. Living doesn't mean diving headfirst into an overwhelming project. "You can save everyone, Doris. You need to take care of yourself first," Elaine implored, genuine concern punctuating her tone. "Then let me figure out how to do both." "You're making me feel guilty for wanting to find purpose," Doris shot back, feeling a wave of betrayal wash over her. It seemed like the moment she found her voice, it was twisted into something negative. A tense silence enveloped them, Doris grappling with the paradox of being both free and ensnared in familial expectations. She took a deep breath, seeking clarity amid the storm of emotion swirling inside her. "I must do this, Elaine. It's about my healing as much as it is about helping others." "I understand, but you're walking a thin line," Elaine warned, her voice suddenly softening. "Just remember, I'm here for you, but I can't promise to support your plans wholeheartedly if it means sacrificing your well-being." Doris felt the heartbreak of that revelation, an established path ahead paradoxically intertwined with the risk of isolation. What did it say about her choices? She had always been the caregiver, the one who shielded her family from harsh realities. Was she simply trading one form of care for another? "Thank you for your honesty, Elaine," Doris said, sensing the warmth of familiar love buried beneath their conflict. "I need you to believe in me, even if it's hard." After a hesitant goodbye, Doris hung up and felt the weight of their conversation settle heavily on her shoulders. Doubt crept in, relentless and gnawing. Her commitment to her vision now felt precarious, hanging in a delicate balance between personal aspiration and familial loyalty. Reflecting on her conversation, she knew her journey was just beginning. She would need to shift her focus beyond proving her worth to others and instead prove it to herself. With every step she took towards building this clinic, she would also need armor against the storm of pushback that could come from the people she loved dearly. As she formed a plan, a sudden wave of realization washed over her that reverberated in two directions. She would not only need to prove herself to her family, but also manifest her aspirations into reality amidst the tangled web of expectations. The question loomed, could she truly forge this new path without losing what made her feel connected to her family? The evening waned, shadows twisting across the rooms, yet within Doris burned the fierce desire for a future she could mold. But before she could step into this new light, there was still one more conversation looming, one that could either solidify her resolve or unravel it completely. She locked her gaze on the calendar hanging in the kitchen. Elaine wasn't the only one waiting for her to make sense of this decision. Tomorrow, she would face her brother-in-law, Harold's former partner, who would be crucial to her vision for the clinic. How would he respond to her plans? Would he share in her conviction or reinforce her doubts? The hour of truth was drawing nearer, and with each tick of the clock, Doris felt a mixture of anticipation and fear coiled tight within her. What would happen when her desires collided head-on with the legacy she aimed to honor? Doris woke up with a lingering heaviness weighing down her chest, a reflection of the emotional confrontation yet to come. She had spent the night in restless sleep, rehearsing the conversation with Harold's former partner in her mind over and over again. The light filtered through the kitchen window, illuminating the dust motes swirling in the air, seeming to mock her turmoil. She poured herself a cup of coffee, the warmth seeping into her palms, offering a moment of solace amid her mounting anxiety. This meeting was more pivotal than she had first realized. It would test not just her professional resolve but also her ability to embrace her own power. She swirled the coffee around in her cup, the sound barely registering as thoughts invaded her mind. Would Peter welcome her vision or would he dismiss it? As she clutched the warm cup, she remembered how Harold used to encourage her, always attentive to her dreams. How would he feel about her stepping into this uncertain landscape? She needed to channel that supportive spirit. His absence should not define her choices. Yet the weight of familial expectation loomed large, a reminder of her sister's fears and the concern that ran deeper than mere words. With every tick of the clock, her heart raced faster. She knew she had to approach this conversation not merely as an obligation but as a reclaiming of her identity. Today would not be about seeking validation, it would be about asserting her vision. In that moment of clarity, she felt a flicker of determination sparking to life within her. The drive felt longer than usual, the familiar streets casting shadows reminiscent of her memories with Harold. It was unsettling, but she needed to confront the past so she could step boldly into her future. As she pulled into the parking lot, she took a deep breath, allowing the scent of the fresh air to mix with the anxious tension. She was about to navigate this concrete jungle of doubt, both external and internal. Entering the building, Doris felt the familiar flickers of anxiety re-emerging, but she pushed through, reminding herself of those who needed her vision to flourish, the community waiting for healing and connection. Finally, she found the right room, its door adorned with a brass nameplate that shimmered in the fluorescent light. Knocking softly, she felt the full weight of her purpose as she waited for the invitation to enter, each second stretching into eternity. "Come in." The voice from inside was warm, yet unfamiliar enough to amplify her nervousness. She took one last steadying breath before crossing the threshold. Peter sat behind a desk cluttered with papers, his brow slightly furrowed. As he looked up, she saw both recognition and malice flickering in his eyes. "Doris," he greeted, his tone neutral, serving both as a buffer and as a challenge. "What brings you here?" Swallowing hard, Doris shifted the momentum from her chest to her voice, determined to project conviction. "I'm here to share my vision for the clinic and how I believe it can honor Harold's legacy." She steadied herself, pushing back against the doubts swirling in her mind. Peter listened intently, but not with the eagerness she had hoped for. "Doris, you know the logistics behind running such an initiative are more complicated than just wanting to help," he began, each word ringing with an air of condescension. As if anticipating his input, she jumped in, fueled by the righteous fire ignited during her sleepless night. I know what I'm asking for, and I'm aware of the challenge. But I also know that this is necessary, not just for me, but for so many others. I have the experience, and I'm ready to put it into action. Her voice wavered but held firm, a direct collision of her desires against the wall of practicality he represented. Peter sighed, leaning back in his chair, his expression a mix of skepticism and contemplation. Doris, this is a huge undertaking. You need support, resources, and a clear plan. Are you truly ready for that? The question hung in the air, thick and suffocating. The stakes had shifted. This was no longer merely about the clinic, it was about her fight for self-belief. Did she have the capacity to organize her passions into a coherent plan? Was the fear of failure driving her, or was it the desire to thrive? Actually, I am ready, she asserted, tasting the stipulation of her own decisions. Please help me map out a plan. I want us to make this work together. Doris's heart raced as she waited for his response, feeling the weight of uncertainty press down upon her. What if he dismissed her? It would feel like another layer of defeat, but not the sort she was willing to accept anymore. Silence stretched on, tension simmering in unspoken words. Would he counter her conviction or support that flickering spark within her? She had taken the plunge, and now all that remained was to see if the leap would bear fruit or send her crashing down. The next few moments would either solidify her vision or force her to confront the fragility of her plans. The answer loomed, and as she looked at Peter, she knew this was merely the beginning of a much higher climb. How far would she go to manifest her vision, and at what cost? Peter's gaze shifted thoughtfully, weighing her words like a silent scale. The tension held steady in the air, forming an invisible barrier that Doris felt pressing against her chest. Each second that ticked by amplified her resolve, igniting a challenge deep within her. Okay, Doris, he finally said, leaning forward, his demeanor shifting just slightly. If we're doing this, we need to be precise. It starts with a plan. Every detail matters, and the stakes will be high. His eyes narrowed, revealing the sharp edge of scrutiny. What do you have in mind? Doris felt her heart racing anew. It was one thing to assert her readiness and another to actualize it. She inhaled slowly, letting the weight of her ambition surge to the forefront of her mind. I want to create programs that bridge the gap between mental health and community engagement, she proposed, her voice steadying further with every word. We can utilize workshops, support groups, and individualized counseling approaches that tap into what people truly need rather than what we think they need. Peter's expression remained unreadable, but she noted the slight furrow of his brow deepening. Doesn't that require a significant investment in both time and resources? Have you considered the budget? Budget, yes. Doris squared her shoulders, knowing she had to prepare for every possible counterpoint. But think about what we could achieve. If we track community outcomes, we'll not only measure success, we can also secure funding from grants and donor contributions. If we start small, we can scale up. Her pulse quickened. Had she really just articulated a systematic approach so clearly? Collecting data from workshops and counseling sessions will require a lot of groundwork, Peter replied, tapping his fingers against the desk, a sign he was genuinely contemplating her plan. And you'll need to recruit the right staff. Have you given thought to your team composition? The question struck her, revealing a facet of her proposal she hadn't fully fleshed out. Although her mind raced with possibilities, she had neglected the logistics of execution. What did her ideal team look like? A fresh wave of uncertainty washed over her as she realized the depth of her undertaking. I'll start by outlining potential roles, she said, determination curling around her words. I could consult professionals in the field seeing who has passion aligned with our vision. Perhaps even bring in former colleagues of Harold S., if they're willing. Living up to Harold S. legacy isn't just about his connections. Peter S. gaze bore into hers, a dissection of her integrity and purpose. It's about proving that you can thrive beyond his shadow. Her insides knotted, but amid the discomfort, there lay ferocity. This isn't about Harold alone. It's about the people still suffering daily, she retorted, the warmth of her passion spilling over the edges of her resolve. It's time to redefine what healing means. It's time I define who I am, free from his legacy. Silence stretched again, this time filled with potential. The air thickened with the power of that revelation, much like a seed pushing through fertile ground, ready to burst into the light. In that moment, Doris understood that her journey was enough, that the weight of expectation could be transformed into a platform for her independence. All right, let us start sketching it out. Peter nodded, a hesitant smile breaking the tension in his brows. I'll give you a week to draft an outline, but I will also want input on managing available resources. Thank you, she replied, her relief mingling with excitement. Yet as Peter began discussing the next steps, a new anxiety flickered within her. Could she indeed maintain control as the project advanced? As he spoke, Doris's mind buzzed with questions. What if she stumbled? What if she lost her footing? The notion of failure loomed in her consciousness, threatening to suffocate her aspirations. But this time, she held the reins. With a mixture of trepidation and anticipation, she prepared to navigate the complexities ahead, knowing each hurdle could lead her closer to her goals, illustrating not only her ability to rise, but to inspire transformation within herself and, perhaps, the world around her. Let us reconvene here next week, Peter concluded, his tone now tinged with an air of respect. Doris nodded, feeling a flame of empowerment igniting her spirit. Thanks for considering my ideas. I won't disappoint you. I just need you to trust me. As she exited the office, her heart raced, and her mind swirled. Would Peter's newfound trust be enough to shield her ambitions against the winds of uncertainty? And could her renewed commitment withstand the pressures of outside scrutiny? She couldn't help but wonder, how much of herself would she have to reveal to ensure the safety of her vision? Could authenticity be her greatest weapon, or would it expose her vulnerabilities where they could be used against her? With the answer still clouded, she faced the growing tide of her transformation. The clock was ticking, and her journey had only just begun. The following week came faster than Doris anticipated. She barely slept in the days leading up to her next meeting with Peter, her mind a whirlpool of plans and possibilities. The outline she drafted was filled with her hopes and fears, each bullet point a testament to her commitment. What had begun as an anxious idea had morphed into a comprehensive plan, yet the gravity of her ambition still loomed over her like a storm cloud. As she sat in front of her computer on the morning of their meeting, she reviewed her notes for the umpteenth time. Could she really execute it all? The thought tugged at her with a mixture of dread and excitement. The vision was clear, yet the path was riddled with obstacles she was still learning to anticipate. Doris arrived at the office earlier than necessary, taking the time to breathe in the familiarity of her surroundings. The sterile walls, once a reminder of Harold's dominance, now felt like a canvas eager for her touches. She entrusted herself to the quiet, letting her doubts blend with determination. When Peter entered, his presence filled the space, and Doris could sense the weight of his expectations. "You look prepared," he commented, an eyebrow raised in curiosity. Her heart pounded. "I've been working on the outline. I think it has potential." "Let us see it," he replied, gesturing for her to present her plan. Taking a deep breath, Doris began her presentation, articulating her objectives clearly and confidently. She outlined specific roles, identified potential collaborations with local experts, and emphasized the importance of tracking outcomes, every point crafted to showcase her thoroughness. Yet as he listened, she noticed Peter's brow furrowing again, making the knot in her stomach tighten further. "Your passion is commendable," he said, tapping his pen against his notebook. "But implementation is where many plans falter. How do you plan to deal with resistance, even from your former colleagues? They may not see it your way." This question hit harder than she expected, a direct confrontation with the insecurities she brushed aside. What if they challenged her ideas? What if Harold's circle questioned her authority? Yet amid her apprehension, a spark ignited. "I believe the data will speak for itself," she said, her voice gaining strength. "If we show them the benefit of these programs, the growth in mental health outcomes, the LLC my vision isn't reckless, it's essential. The community deserves better evidence and support for their struggles." Peter leaned back, studying her more intently. "It sounds like you've thought this through. But you'll have to be ready for pushback, it's inevitable in this field." Fear settled back into her chest. The truth was, she had avoided the darker side of implementation. What if her authenticity faltered in the face of opposition? "Right now, I'm focused on the potential for healing, not on the discomfort that comes with change," she admitted, surprising even herself with her honesty. It was a revelation that stripped away some of her armor. "I can't let fear hold me back from pursuing what I think could turn lives around." "Good," Peter said. "But discover how to navigate the landscape of both compassion and confrontation. You need to be agile. If you can harness your strengths and invite those with contrary views into the conversation, you may find opportunities arise that you aren't currently considering." A shift occurred within her. Doris recognized that confronting the criticism and hesitance wouldn't diminish her goal, it would actually enhance her resolve. Her journey was about more than just fulfilling her vision, it was about evolving into a leader who could balance vulnerability with strength. As the meeting concluded, Peter offered her a new perspective and encouraged her to strategize how to respond to those skeptics. It was daunting, but the prospect of growing from it filled her with naive hope. But despite that, as she left Peter's office, a whisper of doubt circled back. Did she have the real stamina required for this challenge? Was her urge to connect and heal strong enough to endure the fire of conflict? In the quiet of her uncertainty, a new idea began to blossom, a personal challenge to approach one of Harold's former colleagues directly and lay the groundwork for collaboration. Could reaching out to them be the key to evolving her vision? With her spirit both boosted and challenged, Doris knew she stood at the edge of something more profound than any outline could map. The journey was shifting, revealing layers of complexity she had yet to truly confront. Doris spent the next few days mulling over her decision to reach out to Harold's former colleague, Clara. The more she thought about it, the more it felt like a steep mountain she had to scale. Clara was known for her formidable reputation and a skeptical outlook towards innovative ideas, a hangover from the old regime that Harold had maintained. How would Doris even initiate that conversation? As she paced the office, rehearsing potential dialogues in her head, a newfound realization struck her. She needed to approach the meeting not only as an opportunity to share her vision but also to actively listen and learn from Clara's experiences. This wasn't just about persuasion, it was about rebuilding bridges. Deciding to embrace this perspective, Doris first crafted an email that felt genuine yet professional. Her fingers hesitated over the keyboard, a digital barrier that encapsulated her fears. What if Clara dismissed her outright? What if her years of experience overshadowed Doris' newfound confidence? But she pressed on. "Dear Clara," she typed, reflecting on her intentions. "I hope this finds you well. I've been working on a project that I believe could significantly improve our community's mental health services." The words flowed more easily than she initially expected. She highlighted her commitment to evidence-based practices and expressed her genuine desire to understand any concerns Clara might have about change. Send. The action was equal parts empowering and terrifying. With each tick of the clock, anticipation knotted her stomach. Would Clara respond? Would she be willing to meet? The afternoon dragged, but her heart raced every time her phone buzzed. The message she finally received was neither a positive affirmation nor outright rejection, but an invitation to meet for coffee at the corner cafe. Relief washed over her. The first step had been taken. As she approached the cafe, the scent of freshly brewed coffee wafted through the air, mingling with her apprehension. Sitting at the table, Clara was already there, an imposing figure with an air of authority that resonated familiarity. Doris felt small as she took a seat, yet the determination to stand firm in her vision anchored her. Small talk filled the space between them before the conversation took a turn. Your email was well articulated. But hope doesn't drive the work. We need concrete results. What makes you think your approach will be different? Clara's voice was firm, her eyes piercing. Doris swallowed hard. This was her moment, a test of her resolve. I recognize that many have tried and failed before, she responded, preparing to counter the doubt. Yet, I am committed to building a culture of collaboration rather than resistance. By integrating data-driven approaches with feedback from everyone involved, I believe we can refine our strategy to address real needs. Clara leaned back, sizing up Doris's response. There was a moment of silence, and Doris seized that breath of time to rebut her fear with an internal declaration, "This is your space, claim it." They exchanged arguments, one fueling the other. Doris spoke passionately about the need for adaptability in the face of traditional frameworks, while Clara pushed back, insisting that some systems were built on struggle. Each rebuttal she faced hardened her resolve, sharpening her thought process. Clara's skepticism morphed into intrigue as Doris demonstrated patience amid the challenge. She articulated not just her goals but her readiness to engage Clara's concerns, inviting constructive criticism rather than shying away. Doris discovered new facets of her leadership style she hadn't tapped into before. Emerging from that conversation, Doris felt a spark, the kind that ignites a fire. She realized that vulnerability was not a weakness, it was an invitation for deeper connection and cooperation. Clara's initial resistance was, perhaps, a catalyst for growth, paving her way to construct a solid collaboration instead of merely seeking approval. Yet, as she left the cafe, a familiar unease crept back. How many others would respond similarly to her vision? Would every critical voice bolster her resolve as Clara's had, or would some dissuade her entirely? She was at once invigorated by her effort but also painfully aware of her ongoing challenge to navigate the complex terrain of skepticism with the tenacity to remain true to her purpose. Would she harness this newfound courage to seek more voices in the coming days, and how many others like Clara would she encounter? As she walked back to the office, the future felt uncertain yet tantalizingly close. The next step loomed ahead, ripe with potential challenges and opportunities. Doris inhaled deeply, ready to meet whatever lay ahead, or perhaps it was time to confront someone else, another key player from her past, whose opinion could swing future support. The mosaic of her journey was taking shape, one difficult conversation at a time. Doris spent the evening reflecting on her conversation with Clara, replaying every moment in her mind like a video reel. The initial relief of securing the meeting was now mingled with a restless anticipation. Her mind drifted to another figure from her past, someone whose critique had once stung but also motivated her. Larry, an old colleague from previous projects, had a knack for cutting straight to the core of issues and providing no-nonsense feedback. The thought of reaching out to him brought both excitement and trepidation. What if he dismissed her ideas outright? Yet there was a sliver of hope that he could offer insightful criticism, the kind that might propel her project further. If she could withstand Clara's skepticism, confronting Larry might be another opportunity to refine her vision. The next day, she didn't just want to sit with her thoughts. Instead, she pulled up Larry's contact information. Her fingers hovered, contemplating their history. They had clashed more than once, but it was those clashes that had spurred her to develop her own perspectives. Mastering her resolve, Doris crafted a message. "Hi Larry, I hope you're doing well. I'm embarking on an initiative that aims to innovate mental health services, and I would value your thoughts on it." Once again, her heart raced as she hit send. Would he see her efforts as naive or perhaps inspiring? The uncertainty gnawed at her. After a couple of hours, she received a response, an invitation to meet for lunch at a popular diner they used to frequent. As she drove to the diner, butterflies danced in her stomach. She envisioned his signature smirk at the table, likely ready with his own opinion right off the bat. When Doris entered the diner, the familiarity of the decor breathed a sense of nostalgia into her. Larry was already seated, twirling a French fry between his fingers. The banter was light at first. They reminisced, shared a few laughs, and tossed around some inside jokes that signified their camaraderie. But as the conversation shifted towards her initiative, Doris felt herself become defensive. "This is different, Larry," she insisted. "I've done my homework, and I truly believe we can make a difference." His brow furrowed slightly, a telltale sign that he was processing her words with skepticism. "Doris, I admire your enthusiasm, but you need to be realistic. Mental health initiatives have tanked before, often because they lack grounding in real-world implications. What makes you think you have a grasp on this one?" Her heart sank. Though she prepared for this, the delivery pierced her conviction. Yet, remembering her connection with Clara, Doris steeled herself. "What if we don't focus solely on lofty ideals? I'm working on a data-driven model that incorporates direct feedback from service users and providers. This isn't just theory, it's a blueprint for actionable change." Larry leaned in, the skepticism in his eyes morphing into consideration. "All right, let's talk specifics. What data have you gathered so far?" The conversation quickly deepened, stretching from strategies to real-life examples, each point bolstered by evidence and frameworks she had meticulously crafted. The energy shifted. Doris felt herself breaking through barriers of doubt, immersing Larry in her vision. As they delved deeper, it became apparent that Larry's critical viewpoint was not a roadblock but rather an essential tool for guidance. Rather than feeling attacked, Doris discovered how to reshape his blunt insights into opportunities for deeper exploration. For every challenge Larry posed, she countered with reinforced belief, uncovering a resilience that surprised even herself. By the time they parted, Doris found herself invigorated, eager not just for the feedback, but for the opportunity to reevaluate her own concepts in light of his probing questions. It transformed the meeting into a collaborative effort rather than a unilateral assessment. As she walked to her car, the sun dipped low in the sky, infusing the evening with a warmth that mirrored the growth she felt inside. Yet, lurking beneath the surface was a nagging sensation. Despite her incremental victories, would every future conversation challenge her constructs? Tomorrow, she needed to seek even more challenging perspectives, others who might not only test her vision but also force her to confront aspects she hadn't anticipated. Who would be her next opponent, the next designator of her limits? Doris started her car, her heart racing at the thought of this escalating journey. She was ready to explore uncharted territories of doubt and resilience, but would the next encounter galvanize her aspirations, or expose cracks in her resolve? The following dawn felt different for Doris. With each sunrise, she stood taller, bolstered by her conversations and progress made thus far. After meeting Clara and Larry, she understood more deeply what it meant to forge a path shaped by both resilience and constructive feedback. Each discussion had ratified her instinct to honor Harold's legacy, not by living in his shadow, but by standing in the light of her own intent. Today, she was determined to confront another looming challenge: the committee meeting at the community center. This was where key stakeholders would gather to discuss her proposal, and she could feel the familiar pangs of anxiety mingling with excitement. The stakes had escalated. This gathering represented the culmination of her efforts, the possibility of turning a dream into a tangible reality. As she dressed, she couldn't help but reflect on how far she had come. Not too long ago, she was a woman weighed down by the grief of loss, paralyzed by self-doubt and familial misconceptions. Today, she was a woman ready to lead, both empowered by the memory of Harold and propelled by her own ambitions. Upon arrival at the community center, Doris took a steadying breath, her heart pounding in rhythm to her footsteps. The room buzzed with discussions around tables, the hum of voices creating a backdrop that felt simultaneously welcoming and daunting. They were the very voices she had felt uncertain about, those who might support her plans but also those who could dismantle them on the grounds of skepticism. Taking a seat at the front, she noticed familiar faces, some reflecting curiosity while others carried skepticism. But today, she was armed with belief, a force that transcended fear. She pulled out her meticulously crafted plan, each detail a testament to her growth and dedication. As the meeting commenced, Doris stood to address them, nerves cascading around her like a waterfall, but she steadied herself. "Thank you all for gathering today," she began, her voice resonating with a newfound clarity. "What I propose is not merely a project, it's a pledge to our community." She shared her vision not just as an abstract concept, but as a lifeline for those in need. Each statistic she presented came alive with stories of individuals who had needed holistic care and connection. Doris saw head nods around the room, yet she also sensed caution lingering in the air. "But I ask for your collaboration," she continued, her conviction sharp. "This clinic will thrive on unity. Every voice matters: stakeholders, community members, healthcare professionals. We can create solutions together." The atmosphere shifted slightly, the weight of her words beginning to resonate. Questions arose, not as obstructions but as pathways to deeper engagement. One committee member, Jonathan, raised a hand, his brow furrowed with concern. "Doris, we appreciate your passion, but do you have a contingency plan for resistance? Change is never easy." Engaging directly with Jonathan's skepticism, Doris felt the familiar flicker of doubt but responded authentically. "I recognize that adaptability is crucial. I don't expect universal acceptance, but I firmly believe that if we can gather constructive feedback and engage stakeholders early, we can forge a collective commitment to these proposed changes." In discussing potential conflicts openly, Doris discovered a profound connection to her audience. Rather than feeling like isolated figures standing against her, they were partners navigating uncertainties with her. The exchange of ideas became an evolving conversation about not only the ideology of her clinic but also a dialogue around accountability and cooperation. Time passed rapidly, and the meeting drew to a close. As Doris left the room, she felt an exhilarating lightness within her, a palpable sense of achievement. The conflicting energies of fear and hope were now harmonized. She had transformed criticism into constructive collaboration. When Doris stepped outside, the summer breeze greeted her like an old friend, refreshing, invigorating. She had entered the meeting as a woman chasing a dream and left as a collaborator, ready to navigate the complexities that lay ahead. Each critique, every skeptical glance had crystallized her approach, and for the first time, she felt deeply satisfied by her own growth. The journey was far from over, and she understood there would be more challenges ahead. Yet, as she walked through the streets that Harold once walked, the spaces they had shared now felt expansive, filled with possibility rather than grief. She was no longer confined by loss or the expectations of those around her. She had emerged not just as a grandma determined to honor a memory, but as a woman empowered to create, and that was a powerful legacy in itself. With this reconsolidated sense of purpose, Doris couldn't help but smile at the path unfolding before her. Not only had she taken strides toward bringing Harold's dream to life, but she had also emerged as a guiding presence in her own right. Now was the time for everyone to witness this transformation. It was the moment to share her journey, a clarion call for others to embrace the evolution of their dreams. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. True fans of personal overcoming stories understand how vital it is to support the channel through these actions.